I'm surprised that I'm not dead or I'm in jail. All my years, I had a bad history of like alcoholism. You know, after that night, it was just, I wanted that feeling every single night. I wanted it every single night. And I went from 40 ounces to anything. So I've had 3 total DUIs, right? And guess what, man? I feel ashamed for saying this, honestly. I still didn't learn. Looking back at it, that's how powerful addiction is.
Yes.
Some people never get out of it. You know, I'm one of the lucky ones, man. And I don't know. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just pure luck. Maybe, you know, it's easy for me to say like, yeah, you know, I picked myself up by my bootstrap and, you know, I had the sense of awareness to quit drinking, and try to improve my life. That's not the case, man. I got lucky. I still can't explain it, you know.
Right.
If you don't have anything to work on, you start thinking terrible thoughts. If I wasn't doing martial arts, bro, I'd be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I'd be an alcoholic.
Right.
Or if I wasn't working out,
Overweight,
I'd be
probably.
yeah, or you know, whatever.
Right.
I'd probably have something wrong with me as far as like maybe a cancer or something. Bottles of wine. It was hard liquor. I wanted more and more and more. I wanted it to be stronger, stronger, stronger. And at that time, it was just like I liked the feeling, but as I grew a little older, it just got worse and worse. You know, share your story and add value.
Right.
Maybe it might help some kid that's going through the same thing.
Exactly.
That's what we're here for. We're going to be talking about why we decided to do this podcast in the first place.
Yes.
Now, this podcast was meant to be, I know we talked to people across the board and how to their expertise in whatever field that they're in. But it is meant to be like a psychological way for you to get better in life, right? Like
Right.
you get inputs from other people and their expertise, and you get how-to guides to improve your life. And initially, that's why we did this podcast for. But the real core truth about why we're doing this is because, like, our backstory, right? And I wanted to talk a little bit about it and why, you know, it's kind of like, if anyone's wondering why you should watch this podcast, well, you don't have to, you know, but, or if you're wondering why you should listen and what credibility you have, we don't have any rights to that. You know, we just kind of go by our experiences, and there's just something innate that happens that you could share to the world of value.
I agree.
Yeah.
But like what you said, the key word there is experience, right? Anyone can learn from their own experiences, their own mistakes, but it's better to learn from others' mistakes. That's what coaches are, right? The coaches that we train under in martial arts or whatever, like they made a lot of mistakes, and they usually try to prevent us from making the same mistakes because it takes a long time to learn from your own experience. Instead, it's always a better way to learn from others' experience. That's what books, movies, documentaries, that's what all is about, right?
Yeah.
And this podcasting medium, I wouldn't say it's the newest, but it's a newer form of educational entertainment.
Of course, yeah. And that's what it's meant to be. And we also want to document everything from, this is like living proof of anyone could do it, right? Anyone could do it. Not to say that we're like we just started the channel, not to say that we're successful at it even, but I mean, we got our asses up to start it. But what I really want to talk about today is that the reason why, at least why I'm doing it, honestly, and that stems from a long history and a long family history of alcoholism, right? A quick backstory is that my dad's family, they're pretty much all alcoholics.
From the Philippines?
From the Philippines, yeah, and they drink like a motherfucker over there. You know, they're all pretty successful in terms of their definition of it, which is my dad used to be a surgeon, a general surgeon, and we actually lived in the hospital when I was a kid. When I was about so I was born in San Diego, and my parents, because they wanted me to be an American citizen, but my mom was studying to be a nurse. So what they did was, my mom had me in San Diego. In Paradise Hills Hospital. They then I moved to the Philippines at an early age. My mom left me with my dad because she was currently going to school as a
Here
nurse.
in the US?
Yes, here in the US. So they were separated for a while.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was living with my dad, and they were still married, of course, but I was living with my dad, and then my mom was here studying currently. So the plan was initially when she graduated, we moved back to the States, which happened. So I was living with my dad for a while, and what I knew when I was 4, at least from what I could remember, I know it's 4 years old, so it's probably a little blurry. But I'd remember that my dad would literally, in the Philippines, right? It's not as strict, obviously, as they are. There's like, at that time at least, or whatever part of the country we were at, there wasn't that many rules and regulations.
Right.
So I remember his colleagues and like my uncles would be eating outside of the hospital and drinking. That's
like literally outside the hospital.
literally outside the hospital.
Right.
That's how it was.
Probably smoking too.
At least back then. Yeah, the
Cigarettes.
rules have probably changed because I think the Philippines got more westernized. But they'd what's called pulutan. It's kind of like they'd have all this greasy food, like they ate over there.
2,000 calories in one meal.
Yeah, exactly.
something.
The most fattening foods, and then they drink beer and all that stuff. And I had a babysitter, and I got to witness that. Like, they'd take care of me while my dad was like out and doing his thing with his colleagues and his brothers. But yeah, it was a very heavy drinking culture in the Philippines.
Right.
And that's really what like I witnessed as a kid, right?
That's your norm. Like that's what you normally.
Yeah, and I know, again, to reiterate, I was very young, so it is kind of blurry. But when I grew up, my dad started telling me, and then you start connecting the dots. And his dad died of like liver cancer, and then his brother died. Then again, they're all successful. Like, as far as my dad's brother, Benny, he was a general in the Philippines. He was the man of the police force. There was a lot of corruption going on there too.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and then my dad's dad was a fucking successful surgeon, right? But he drank a lot. Probably drank during like his surgeries because it was fucking legal over there. Like, you couldn't do anything, right? Like, it's just, yeah, it is what it is. You couldn't tell him to stop. He's your fucking surgeon. Like, it doesn't matter.
Right. But those are stressful jobs at the same time. Like becoming a surgeon, you're faced with death all the time. And if you're in the police force, you still deal with a lot of stress, right? Criminals, murder cases, robberies. Like, it's a stressful job.
Yeah,
so that's a coping mechanism, maybe.
For sure, yeah. And a lot of it has to do with inheritance. It's just family, it's family lineage. But that went the same for my dad. Funny thing is that when my dad, so once everything happened, once we moved back to the States because my mom graduated, crazy thing is my dad left all of it to go move in the States with my mom, right? So anyway, fast forwarding to our topic, his brother, like I said, and his dad and a couple of his brothers died due to symptoms of like alcoholism, right? Pancreatic cancer, liver cancer. And weirdly enough, my dad stopped alcohol when he had me. Like, I don't know what kind of pact he had with my mom. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it was affecting their marriage, but he stopped out of all his brothers and sisters and, his dad. But anyway, as I was growing up, when I started like kind of rebelling as a teenager, I started getting into that stuff. I had a best friend, and he introduced me to a Old English. A 40 ounce of Old English. And it was at a party. I still remember when I first got drunk.
Plastic or glass?
It was the bottle. It was the big bottle
of
40 ounce OE.
Okay.
OE, dude.
All right.
The piss looking drink.
Yeah.
And man, like, he was like, yeah, just drink it. I was like, fuck. And you don't want to be that guy, right?
Yeah,
you don't want to be not too cool for school.
Yeah.
So it was like, we had this party at his house. It was like his brother, and we kind of knew everyone, a lot of people from that high school. Everyone was there. I'll tell you what, man. It was obviously one of the most disgusting things I've ever tasted at first. But after I got drunk for the first time, it was one of the most fun I've ever had.
Right.
Like, if there was something in my teenage years that I could go back to that was fun as shit, it'd be that. It would be that one memory where we were just in the house party and I didn't give a fuck. Like, I was just I was like slapping this girl's ass like at the age of like 16.
Liquid courage.
Exactly. And that was the first time I felt liquid courage. I didn't give a shit. And then when I did that, I remember slapping her butt. It was some girl I knew, obviously. It wasn't one of those like random. It was like a friend of mine. But then she turned to me, I remember, and she was just like, like smiling because she was probably drunk too. You know?
Yeah.
And it was just, everyone was just having a good time, is what I'm saying. Like everyone was just like in their own world. Everyone's just fucked up and having their own liquid courage. And that's just history from there. But yeah, man, like, so what I wanted to get to was, again, the reason why I'm doing this podcast is because of that, because I'm a late bloomer and I started everything late. Like I started working out late. I've always worked out in high school. But it wasn't consistent, you know. I was kicking it with the jocks and shit, so I had a little bit of a background. But all my years, I had a bad history of like alcoholism. You know, after that night, it was just I wanted that feeling every single night. I wanted it every single night, and I went from 40 ounces to anything, man.
Hard liquor,
dude.
like whiskey,
It didn't matter, man. It was like bottles of wine. It was hard liquor. That's when I graduated. You know, that's when it was like, I don't even, like, I want it more and more and more. I wanted it to be stronger, stronger, stronger. And at that time, it was just like, I liked the feeling, but as I grew a little older, it just got worse and worse, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, we went through a similar path. Like, I did have my fair share of underage drinking, throwing house parties, whatever. There's still, like, unanswered questions. Like, I don't know who burned my dad's carpet and my couch. Like, there was like two distinct cigarette burns that I never learned the answer to. I think that's going to be a mystery forever because everyone was blaming each other. And I never found out. Like, it's been almost, like, 15 years now. But that's a mystery that's never going to be solved.
Okay.
I just skipped a bunch of branches. But to go back to your story, yeah, obviously, like, you're chasing that high, right? Because you're inexperienced at the same time with alcohol or any sort of drug, like weed or whatever. So first time you do it, it's like, oh my, this is the greatest feeling ever. And I want to keep this party going until I drop. And then you become addicted, right? So
yeah, coupled with like genetics, you know, because inheritance is a big part of it. Like I said, if you have a lineage of it, you know, going through family history, that's, I believe, is a big part for sure. But yeah, it's just addiction to substances is a motherfucker because, like we talked about before, when I talk about it, like to my coworkers and stuff, if we're just telling stories, and I'll be like, "Oh, I used to do this. I used to like be an alcoholic." And don't get me wrong, I wasn't into like any other drugs. You know, I wasn't like addicted to any other drugs. At least it was just alcohol. That was my kryptonite because it was just so fucking fun. Because I got out of my head. It was the liquid courage on steroids.
Right.
It was just like, dude, I feel invincible. But that's the problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's the problem. And as anyone that drinks knows, even if you're just a casual drinker, it's hard to just have one or two drinks.
Yeah.
Right? It's tough because to me, what's the point of drinking? If you're not just going to go along. I mean, that's literally why you drink, right?
Yes.
And when people say like, yeah, I'm just going to have like a glass of wine or two, it depends what way they go. Because I have a friend, he's like, yeah, I'll have like a drink. He literally does, and he doesn't even finish it. Like, say if he has a glass of wine or a beer, he doesn't it's like half. He just literally drinks it for half. But then when someone finishes like 1, 2, 3, 4 beers,
yeah, he's gonna keep
it's almost
on
a
coming.
white and black area, right? That people go through. But yeah, man, so much shit has happened that I want to make people aware of it, especially at a young age.
Younger age.
And yeah, based on this podcast and why I interview people to better their lives, you know, it's because if anyone younger is listening to this, you want them to kind of get those habits early, right? I know that you have to go through like lessons and you have to kind of, take those lessons and apply it through whatever you go through. So it's kind of just better in a way to go through them rather than have someone tell you, right? Because you're not going to know how it feels. It's kind of like heartbreak a little bit. I could tell you about it, but till you know how it's a motherfucker, like addiction and, you know, all that shit, then you're always almost prone to it. Like you're susceptible. It's crazy. Yeah. But yeah, man, like as I started getting older, I kept drinking, and that's when I first got my DUI, man.
Uh-huh.
Weirdly enough, my first DUI was me fucking just drunk, and I actually, it was so blurry, but I was going down Spring Mountain and the 15. I was going into the 15.
Oh, yeah, freeway.
Yeah. And I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't on my phone because I wasn't like a heavy smart user. You know, I remember that. But I kind of got distracted, and I actually hit a car. Like I rear-ended a car.
Oh, that's not good.
And I was like, oh no. You know what I mean?
You're at fault.
I was like, yeah, I'm at fault.
You're
And
shit-faced.
I'm shit-faced, dude. I'm just fucking shit-faced. And it was like a man and a woman. I still remember. And again, it was blurry, but I got out of the car. I talked to him for a little bit, but I'm sure the guy was like, oh, this guy reeks of alcohol. It wasn't a heavy impact. And I'm not trying to justify it.
Right.
But at that time, I was like, yeah, okay, we'll just wait for the police to get here. I knew I was fucked. And that was at early age of like 21 or something like that. But by then, the alcoholism had already set in from the time when I was 16. I was drinking very heavily. So I had, rear-ended it. We were waiting for the cops, and I already knew I was fucked, man. You know what I mean? But I was scared. I was scared.
Of course, yeah. You just had a car
it was my first
accident,
time.
right?
I got in a car accident. I hit someone. You don't know the rules of the law, and it's almost like the worst thing you could do at that time, right? Like at the age of 21, and obviously that was boneheaded, but yeah, that's how it happened. So we waited for the cops, and the cop immediately knew. So I took everything. I took the what's it called? The sobriety test, and also the breathalyzer. And
You passed the sobriety test?
Hell nah, dude.
Okay.
Like,
all right.
Hell
hey,
nah,
you never
like,
know, bro. We don't.
I tried to pass it for sure, but it was like that Reno 911 where like, yeah, do a dance. It was like stand in a straight line. I'm doing this dance. But all joking aside, dude, like, yeah. So they took me to the county jail, right? They took me to not the county jail. I'm sorry, like the detention center. Right. I guess you could say, the detention center. The drunk tank is what they called it.
Yeah, drunk tank. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's a long, drawn process, man.
Right.
Like
a lot of paperwork.
They leave you there for a reason, right? They don't give a fuck. They treat you like animals.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
just it. And looking back at it, you deserve to. You know what I mean? You did a stupid thing.
Right.
And
It could have been much worse.
It could have been, yeah, fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
And I did a very, very stupid thing, and then it was just you go in there, you wait in the processing room, right, to get your name called up. And crazy thing is, you're still handcuffed to the chair.
Oh yeah.
Right, like obviously.
Can't leave. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're in there with people that like just stabbed someone, you know what I mean, and committed like felonies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they treat you the same. They treat you the same, man. And as you should be, you could have killed someone too.
Yeah.
But at that time, that wasn't my mindset. It was almost like, oh, what do you mean? Dude, I don't belong here. You know what I mean? With these people. But in actuality, you could have killed like a whole family and a baby or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Like
you
you
never
being
know.
all fucked up. But yeah, you were handcuffed to it, and they make you wait like 8 hours. And then you go in for processing. You got to get fingerprinted to get you in the system database.
Yeah.
And then you wait another like fucking hours, like 6 hours in another processing room, and then that's when they take you to the drunk tank. And weirdly enough, luckily, fortunately enough or not, I had friends that were willing to bail me out, dude. Even till this day. That's how I know. Like they're my true friends because I actually called them. They have a phone in there for you to
one
call
call.
bail
Yeah.
bonds. Yeah. Or to call a friend to get a bail bond to call.
Right.
But they leave you there for like a minimum of like 16 hours or something like that.
To sober up, to like get the processing done.
Yeah, the first time that you go in there, like in the drunk tank, when you're actually in like, the
center.
like the cell, whatever you want to call it, you can get a OR, own recognizance, I believe it's what it is. If you don't have a felony or a misdemeanor, I think if you don't have like a felony or it's your first time that's there, you can get released on your own recognizance. Yeah. So they'll just release you after a certain hours. You got to get sober first and all that stuff. They give you, your court date and all that. It's actually on the piece of paper with you.
Yeah.
When you go in.
Mm-hmm. I got a ticket. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
It shows you like your bail amount, right? And what's crazy is like they release you at like the worst time. They release you in the middle of downtown at like 3 a.m.
Right.
So. They do it on purpose.
Right.
And then when the cops
get in more trouble.
Yeah, they literally like when you're getting processed out of there, that takes hours too. And the cops are like joking around. They're fucking with you and shit. And as a kid, you're so scared, and they know that because you don't know what's gonna happen to you because it's your first time.
Right.
And it was just a scary thing. But anyway, I continue to do it. I continue to drink. And guess what? A month later, I got another DUI.
And that's on your record, right?
Yes. I got another DUI like a month later, which was fucking crazy.
Not a good look.
Yeah, it's not a good look. And this was over at Lake Mead, right? The crazy thing is that federal and state laws, I believe, don't stack with each other.
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Right.
So, meaning it's not their jurisdiction. It's not the state's jurisdiction. That means Lake Mead was it's under federal land. So they got their own rules.
Interesting.
For that.
So Metro didn't pick you up for the second one. The first one was Metro?
Exactly.
But the second one is like state trooper or whatever?
Yeah, it was like a state. Yeah, exactly. It was like maybe it was like a park ranger. You know what I mean? A park ranger that called the state trooper.
Right.
Or whatever, the federal, I don't know. And yeah, it was just, I was driving from Lake Mead. We had gone to a boat party, and I was swerving. And they kind of knew. I think they tracked us. They were just waiting for the right time. They were like, these kids are fucked up.
Right.
Especially that guy that's driving all of them in that SUV's fucked up. And they pulled me over. And again, I was like, I can't believe this is happening, bro.
Back to back?
Yeah, back to back, which is stupid because I was completely shit-faced, so I don't know why I couldn't believe this was happening. But, you're a dumb kid. You're a dumb, naive kid. And, yeah, man, like, they took me to a small jail. Over in Lake Mead, which was surreal because you see that in movies. Like you see that in Western movies where it was like a small jail cell. It was like
one person.
Right. And they were literally, dude, I was crying, dude.
That's probably a holding room. That's what it's called.
Holding room, till they take you to like a bigger, I was crying, dude. I was like 21. I was like, I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I was like, I got a DUI just last month.
Yeah.
I thought that was the end of me. It was like, dude.
Face some like jail time maybe. Like,
definitely. And it wasn't just that. I didn't even fear the jail time, man. I feared my parents.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That was probably one of the
and you got Asian parents too.
Yes,
so.
exactly. Exactly, dude.
Like, I don't want to be a stereotype here, but.
Everything that I ever tried to do when I got those DUIs, I tried to avoid it with my parents. My parents didn't even know I got the first DUI. Like my friends bailed me out.
I won't tell them.
I'm sorry, not my friends, but I was out on my own recognizance on the first one, and then the second one, I was able to get out.
Okay.
With my friends bailed me out of that one. When I got moved to North Las Vegas, that's where they move you to, right? From Lake Mead, yeah. They have to stick you, somewhere, right? So they moved you but you're still under federal jurisdiction laws. So anyway, I called my friends. One of my friends picked me up, and I remember my friend, man, he was like so disappointed because he knew me as that like drinker. He was like, dude, it was like one of those things. It's like seeing your high school buddy just go down the toilet.
Right.
He was like, he would pick me up, and he was like, man, fuck, man, like, he had that talk with me. And I was shamed, but I was like, man, shit. It was like, who are you to tell me that shit? Because I was still like in my head.
Right.
I was worried about something else. And man, I remember when I woke up that following morning, when me and my dad was going to church, or when me and my mom were going to church, right? Fuck. I broke down and told her, dude. I was like, I've gotten 2 DUIs in the past month. And because there was no hiding it at that point, because I thought I was going to go to jail. I was like, you need to know that I'm going away for a while. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it was one of the worst things. So yeah, she told my dad, and I was just like depressed for the longest. I stayed in bed for, I think, for a good like 4 days. Like literally didn't get out, and you know, it was just crazy, dude. And and the thing was is that like, yeah, you know, your dad and mom tried to put like restrictions on you, but that never happens because you're still like a fucking crazy ass kid that drinks too much.
Of course, yeah. And I hear you, bro. Like we share a very similar path when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But it always feels good to come clean at the same time.
Yeah.
I bet like after you come clean, obviously it's an emotional moment for you and your mom. But like that's a relief, you know, because you're not hiding a secret.
Yeah, man. And yeah, so when we got home, you know, like it was just one of those like, okay, I gotta stop. And I didn't stop. I just didn't, you know what I mean? It didn't matter. That addiction is very, very powerful. Like addiction. Again, when I tell people that like I used to live this life, they're like, dude, I can't imagine you like that, like the way I am now. But it's real. Right. It's fucking real. And I know I was younger, but that's not really an excuse. It's just addiction. When I look in hindsight, that's just addiction taking over. Because I still I still found ways to get out. I still had friends pick me up, and even though my parents would like ground me at that time, I'd wait till like 2 in the morning, dude, and I'd fucking, you know, get a drink. Even with the friend I was living, even if it was just at a park and we didn't go to like some party or something. Yeah. We just went out to drink. I just like the feeling too much, man. I like to know myself. It was just alcoholism. Right. That's what it was.
Yeah, the problem with that is whenever you're drunk or high, like I got the same with weed actually in Turkey and when I first moved to Cali. So you do things high, drunk, whatever, and then you try to do the same thing completely sober, and in your mind, I could have watched this movie high or drunk, and I bet it would feel better. And then next time you go to the beach or whatever, you're like, oh, I wish I had a couple of cocktails in me right now, you know, like, or smoke a little bit of weed. So that's the mindset that beats you up. You know, the events, the things that you do on a day-to-day basis doesn't give you the same excitement level unless you're drunk or high or doing some other drug or whatever. I think that's the major problem with addiction. Like your day-to-day life changes because you don't feel the same level of excitement.
Right. At least for alcohol, what it really does, I was reading this book, like, don't drink anymore, or you can't stop drinking, or something like that. It was like an alcoholism book. And it was saying that alcohol, at least, I don't know about like, you know, all the other stuff, but then it just dumbs down your senses. That's the reason why you think you can't, because all your senses are dumbed down, from your hearing to your impaired vision to the way you talk. You slur, right? When you know, you're drinking a little bit too much. So it shuts down your forebrain too. Like your sense of thinking goes out the window. Yeah, that's pretty much, right? Pretty much, yeah. And for me, that's why I did it for, you know, because I didn't want to face reality. It was like, what am I going to do? I don't know if, I'm pretty sure that stems from childhood. And and you know what? I got to say this because it's not that I had a broken childhood, man. I had two wonderful parents, right? Like that, they were fucking immigrants through and through, right? Like, well, I wouldn't say that because my mom, you know, came here to the States, you know, legally and stuff like that. But yeah, I had two wonderful parents that like took care of me. I didn't have, you know, like one of those like, oh yeah, like I was just broken I made it as a kid, like by myself, you know. Had two very loving parents. And yeah, it could happen to anyone, man. You know, it doesn't have to be that you had a fucked up childhood. Right. It can happen to anyone. I had a good upbringing. I don't know if it was from the pressures of what I was expected to do, you know, but right now the insights don't matter. The problem is that, you know, I got into it. But going back to my story, here we go, right? Like years down the line, I was able to, I started getting smart about it, quote unquote. And I try to limit my driving as much, like as far as everything happened. Oh, by the way, your license gets suspended. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, your license gets suspended. Right. And before I move on to my next DUI, federal laws and state, at least at that time, they don't stack with each other. I think I mentioned that, right? Yeah. So that's why I was able to get away with just one, like
The second
misdemeanor.
one or the first one?
Yeah, because I think 3 strikes is like a felony, right? And then I think that's jail time, considering like your lawyer pleads for you. You know what I mean? And you take a plea deal, you know, and stuff like that. But
Community service for 6 months or whatever.
yes, and that's exactly what I had to do for the Lake Mead incident. I went to North Las Vegas, bro. And I got my car broken into. It was fucking crazy. But yeah,
Las
it was
Vegas,
like,
bro.
okay, yeah, I
I'm
get
not
it.
surprised.
They stole my stereo from my Pathfinder. Like, it was nuts. But yeah, so they didn't stack. So I guess I got lucky, you know? Like, it was just counted as 1 misdemeanor.
Right.
And not like a fucking 2 of them. So yeah, that's what ended up happening with that. But anyway, I was quote unquote safe for a couple of years because I tried to play it smart, meaning I drove without a license, by the way.
Yeah.
All right. Just because.
You have to, right?
Yeah.
You're young,
And
you want to go out.
and again,
hang out with your friends.
Of course. Yeah. It's that. Yeah. And you got to get to work and stuff. And again, with my parents, I didn't want to, you know what I mean? My dad was very high strung. Like, he was like, yeah, you know, you could drive and stuff. I was like, yeah, you're good.
Of
You know,
course,
I
of
got to
course,
take care of. Don't worry about it. You know, but I was driving illegally. At first, they suspend your license for, I believe, 90 days.
Okay.
And then it's a year.
Yeah.
I drove without a license for like a year,
That's
like
a big
illegally.
markup.
Yeah. I drove very carefully, but that's besides the point. But anyway, some years down the line, I got my 3rd one, man. Yep. And it was at a 4th of July. I remember it was a 4th of July party with all my friends. You know, it was like a pool party. We were drinking and I went home, I believe, at like 5 in the morning. I remember I saw the sun coming up and I think I was looking at my phone. I was distracted at a stoplight and then it turned yellow. The cop was right behind me. Right, I wasn't paying attention to that. I was at an intersection. The light turned yellow. The car went, and then as the light turned red, I was like, "Oh shit!" For some reason, I panicked, and then I
stopped.
I drove.
Oh, you
I
drove.
drove past it. There it is, dude.
You ran the red light.
Yep, I
technically.
ran the red light, and then the cop.
I got pulled
And I'm
over.
pretty sure she knew. She was like, "This is weird behavior," and I got pulled over. I remember it was like a girl cop. It was a woman cop.
No partner, just her.
Just her, but they always call for backup.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah,
yeah.
they always call for backup right after that. Yeah, it was just her. And then she was like, she was like, hey, can you step out of the car? Or
You
she
don't
was
have
like,
your
no,
driver's
no.
license.
She said, no, I had
you
it by
got
then.
back.
Sorry,
Okay.
yeah. I had it back because it was years down the line.
Right, I got you.
And she had said, did you have any drinks? And you know what I told her, dude? I'm fucked up. Like, because I already knew. I've gone through the process already. There was no getting out of it. There's no, maybe I could get away from this one.
Is
I
you
was
gonna
like,
get a breathalyzer? At
dude,
least?
I straight up, I told her I was fucked up. And then she was like, okay, let's take the sobriety. Because I think they need it for like evidence, you know, to the court and stuff like that.
Right.
And I know a lot of people said like, oh, you should have said no to the breathalyzer, dude. I don't know what that entails. I don't know how that works, you know, and all that stuff. They're like, yeah, refuse to take the breath test and stuff. And
I think they take you to hospital for blood tests or
blood,
something
yeah,
like that.
something like that. And yeah, I was just like, no, fuck it. And so when we did, she was like, okay, can you stand in a straight line, you know, with the sobriety test, what like one of the tests. I said, no, just take me to jail. I'm fucked. I swear to God, like that's literally what I said. I was like, just stick me in your car, man. Like there's no getting away from this, you know? She was like, okay.
That works.
That was it. Yeah. She took me there
compliant.
and that's literally my down moment. Like that was when, and that still didn't stop me. Right? That was my lowest of the low. You know what I mean? And yeah, that still didn't stop me from, you know, doing stupid shit, drinking again. I was back at it, dude. I had my friend bail me out. That's the crazy thing about the court system, man. You find out that it's just, when you get into all that shit, it's a slap in the wrist. And I don't know if I think it's for sure Vegas too, and the state laws that they have here.
Right.
Because I think money makes the world go around.
Yeah, dude.
As far as the court systems, they all work with each other. The lawyers, dude, the lawyers. I was so
want
scared.
you to get into trouble.
Yeah,
Like-
I was so scared that I got a lawyer where you could get a public defender, but I got a lawyer. And you know what my lawyer was doing? I don't know. It's probably a good thing for me, I guess. But he was chatting it up with the judge, dude. He was
Yeah.
like, "Hey, good to see you again, man." I mean, obviously, right? Because they got to
Right.
go there and see the same people every time.
Right, right.
They're like colleagues almost. And yeah, it's just they know how it works, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not trying to blame the system and everything. That was my own stupidity, but that's what I observed.
Mm-hmm.
It was a cycle. It was like, oh, get me the driving panel test that you need to. You got to take the point demerit thing, you know, the driving, get back your points and all that stuff. And under the influence test, I went to a mortuary, dude. I went to a mortuary, like, you know, for them to like scare you and stuff from drinking and driving.
Right, right.
Rightfully so. Yeah, I saw like dead body. It was smelled in there. Like it was, I still remember. It was part of my contingencies to what I had to take for to get quote unquote cleared or my plea deal or whatever. But yeah, man, I didn't learn from there, and it was like the darkest fucking moments. And in a little bit here, I'm gonna talk about like the other stuff that happened besides my DUI. But to kind of finish it off, so I've had 3 total DUIs, right? And guess what, man? I feel ashamed for saying this, honestly. I still didn't learn. Looking back at it, that's how powerful addiction is.
Yes.
It's no fucking joke, right? I'm not like the religious type either. And I'm not, you know, I know that's what they put you through 12 step. They say, you know, God a lot and, you know, but it's just, dude, like I had reached like rock bottom, man. And I still kept going, you know? I still kept fucking drinking. I still got into like some stupid shit. It was just like, fuck, it was crazy. Today, when I talk about like, when we vent and talk stories and stuff, I always tell people, I don't know how I'm still alive. And this isn't being too melodramatic.
Right.
I tell people, I don't know how I'm still alive, or I don't know how I'm not in fucking jail, you know, because I never thought I was going to get out of it. You feel like you're in a prison loop. Just drinking alcohol itself, you feel like in a prison loop.
Right.
Not literally in prison, but you feel like
It's
you
a
can't get
cycle.
out. It's a cycle. You go to work, and I was never the type to drink in the mornings, you know, not the Jack and Coke, like not put the Jack in my Coke and then go about my business in the mornings. I never drank in the mornings, man. It was just
That's
at
probably the
night.
savior of your
Possibly,
life,
yeah, possibly,
Day
yeah.
drinking is a different ballgame.
Right, kind of like that movie with Nicolas Cage, Leaving Las Vegas.
Oh, that's a great movie.
That's a crazy movie, huh? That sums it up,
Right.
pretty much. Like
That's a
that's how
very
hard
good movie.
addiction is. But you know, there's different kinds. It's like an individual. It's different for everyone. I was the night drinker where I wanted to chill at home, drink by myself in my own room. At least when I got older, right?
Right.
And yeah, I would talk about like the fights that I've gotten into, you know, when I thought I was a cool kid and
Right.
that was the thing to do. It was like protect your territory, bro.
Oh, yeah,
and I had
always.
friends doing the same thing that will like
Tribalism.
You're all the same. Yeah, you're all the same, right? You influence each other. We got in a fight outside of like this pool hall. Like a big fight. It was so crazy, you know? And that was due to like alcohol. That was one. We got in a fight outside of Blue Martini, which yeah, I got taken for that. There's another case that they took me to the detention center in. And yeah, man, like, whoo, it was just crazy. I've been to bars. I remember this. So here's another story. I remember it was Super Bowl weekend, or right after the Super Bowl, with the 49ers and the Ravens. Anyway, I remember that clearly because it was when it happened. Like that was like a highlight of it.
Right.
Me and 2 girlfriends were at the bar, right? We were like, all right, cool, you know. They were like, okay, well, we're going to head out. I was like, oh, I'm just going to drink some more. It was like fucking 3 a.m. Randomly, there was these guys that came in. And I was told that I knew them. I was already blacked out by then, bro. And I told I've known them for a long time. There was like some rival, you know, kids. Or I don't know. It was just some random kids.
In the block, but they're not your
Yeah,
friends,
yeah. Like
basically.
you know of them and they know of you. You know, shit like that
yeah,
at that time.
I hear you.
And then, dude, I was just on autopilot by then. And I just started randomly talking shit. I was on autopilot.
You're a bitch.
Yeah, I just came up to him. Yeah, exactly. I just came up to him and then I just started talking shit. And then from what I heard too, the guy was like kind of being cool about it. But finally, I was just fucking talking.
Everyone
And there
has
were
a
like,
tipping point, right?
yeah, from what I heard, there was like 5 or 6 of them. This is like basing it on the
Legend
bartender.
has it. Legend has it.
Yeah, this is basing it on the bartender that told me the next, the fucking next morning. So one of them cold cocked me, right? And I fell to the floor because I was so fucking belligerent and couldn't stand straight. I got hit from behind and then they just started like kicking me on the floor. One head stomped me pretty much. Yeah. And then my bartender, who was a friend of mine, he literally jumped over the bar, to stop it. It was like, fuck, his name's Christos. Shout out Christos. Probably could have got brain damage by then. But then, he jumped over the bar and he just stopped it. So fast forward the next morning, I remember getting up at the lounge area.
You're trying to recollect, like the...
Yeah, I got up. It was like 6 a.m. I was like, oh, all right, well, fuck. Like I was just
dehydrated.
Drunk. Yeah, and I was like, all right, I'm ready to go home. My jaw hurt for some reason. And
for some reason.
Yeah, and I didn't drive. Like my friends drove me to that bar. So
finally.
Yeah, my friend, he was like, hey, do you want me to take you back? I'm going to take you back to your car and, you can drive home. Are you okay to drive home? I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
Of course, yeah.
Bro, I did not know what happened. I thought it was just I got drunk and fell asleep at the lounge. They didn't want me to drive, so I fell asleep at the lounge. When all that shit happened. All that shit.
Blackout.
Yeah, I blacked out.
That's the worst.
And so when I was in his truck, when he was taking my car, he was like, I was acting like I was normal, just talking to him. Just, hey, what's up, man? Yeah. You all right? He was like, dude, do you know what happened last night? I was like, what do you mean? Like, I just fell asleep on the lounge, right? Because I was so fucked up. He was like, dude. And he just told me the whole story. So that was, those were just some stories of what I was blacked out pretty much my whole 20s, man. I could probably keep going on and on. And I do remember some stuff, fights and DUIs and talking shit to my own friends, very destructively. And not knowing where I'm at. I've fell asleep in the car a few times. I've been on the floor somewhere, somewhere. Yeah, and I'm surprised I'm still here, honestly. But saying that is pretty much some of the story. I'll talk more about it as I go, but I don't like our memories are very we can't rely on them so much.
No.
But those are the things that I do remember. And if I were to keep going and just adding stuff up, it'd probably be inaccurate. Right. But those are like some of the highlights that what I went through in my 20s. Mostly blackouts, honestly. And when I talk about drinking, I was saying like blacked out every night. That's when we're talking about like whiskey every night, right? 750 milliliters, a whole bottle of Jameson, Jack, you name it, man. And I could down that.
Bourbon.
Yeah. So after like the party stage, I just started drinking in the room by myself because I thought that I was doing myself a favor. I was like, if I'm not out, then I can't get in trouble, right? Which was true for the most part.
But isolation is never the
that's
solution.
when it really sets in, That's when it really sets in.
Like downward spiral even more.
Yeah. So I'm sure my parents, like when I was living at them at the time in my early 20s, they noticed. I was I was throwing shit around in my room, I was like an angry drunk. And probably something, was inside me that made me frustrated, angry, whatever. And when I'd go on autopilot, I was very, very angry. I never hurt anyone, like as far as like physically, I was probably too belligerent too. And I probably wouldn't honestly hurt anyone. I say that now, but at that time. But yeah, man, it's a motherfucker, man. Addiction's a motherfucker. And to sum it all up, that's why I decided to do this podcast, right? And look, I don't need any. I'm not trying to get.
That's a good connector, though. Like you connected to the first question.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to. Listen, man. Everyone lives a different life. I'm not telling people to join like the sober club. Even everyone goes through different struggles. Everyone has their own addictions, their own demons, and stuff like that. But
I agree 100%.
Yeah, but people need to know this just because if you do have like an addiction, you're not alone, man. You're not alone. And even if you get through it somehow, because I think you're always going to be like an alcoholic or, you know, an addict. But if you do somehow get through that part of your life, dude, it's still forever with you, right? And yeah, for the people out there that's dealing with it, man, like that's a heavy one, just because everyone just as an addict, you go through it. You go through it. It's not like I'm gonna tell you, you know, my story, and all of a sudden, like, yeah, that's why you should quit. Yeah. Sad enough is that you almost have to reach, at least for me, you almost have to reach rock bottom to change. You got to be sick and tired again of being sick and tired.
Right.
And it's up to you to do that, unfortunately. But like you said, connecting everything, that's why we're doing this podcast, man. That's why it's literally, this is it. This is why we set all this up for this moment, for why the self-improvement space is so dear to me, why we decided to do, why I'm talking to all these people to get better at things, because it's an outlet for those kinds of things, for addiction, for depression, for whatever you're going through, man, for a broken childhood, you know, for trauma, for PTSD. I plan to have like military people in here to talk about their stories, first responders, just regular people too. Just regular people. They don't have to have expertise in anything, but if they could tell their story, man, like the last girl that I had on, shout out Sierra, you know, she had a lot to say, and like just, and I also believe you don't have to be some crazy, like, oh, you've gone through this, like, you've reached the bottom of the hill and then you went over the hill and it was like a success story. It doesn't have to be that. You can learn it from just common, quote unquote, average folks like us. It's kind of like that's probably more suitable for you than some guy that, like, yeah, I came from the bottom and I was addict and then all of a sudden I'm like this mega millionaire. It's kind of like, no, man, like the person right next to you is going through the same thing and he's overcome it, and you know, it could inspire you, man. It could inspire you.
And I know we're in the minority here probably, but you and me, we're both like single childs. Like, you don't have a sibling, right?
I have a sister.
Oh, you have a sister?
Yeah.
I actually forgot
It's okay,
about
man.
that.
Yeah,
no,
it's all right.
I do. You did tell me that.
Yeah.
But like in my experience as a single child, like I learned to grow up relying on my own. You know, I used to hate asking for help about anything. Like when it's group projects, I always try to do my own stuff. You know, even though I was a part of a group or whatever, and that shaped me a little bit. But then I realized in my mid to late 20s, when I was more involved in film and stuff like that, you have to collaborate with people to reach to the next level. And then I realized that asking for help is not giving up. It's refusing to give up. So with this whole addiction cycle that we've been talking about, I had my fair share on those stories as well, like DUIs and stuff like that. It wasn't like a serious offense back in Turkey, but I understand that, you know, like I understand your side of things. So,
Yeah.
but if you're going through some chaos right now, just ask for help. Like, it's always better. Like two minds are better than one. Like, you have to address your problems, right?
Yeah.
To find a solution.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Any help. We're all fucking, and that's the great thing about being a social human being, you know. I know that it's very touchy to a lot of people. Like, you don't want to go around, you know, the main like thought about that, I think, to an addict is that they don't want to see you in that light, right? Like your family and your friends. You want to, especially for guys and shit, like you want to be strong. You want to be stoic a little bit, even at a young age.
Right.
We're men. Like, we don't want to talk about our problems, and we think we could just handle everything and all that.
Right.
But yeah, so going back to it, I finally decided to go to AA, right? Alcoholics Anonymous. I went there for a good 4 months, and yeah, and honestly, it did help. It did help. I went twice a day. I went one at night before I went to work or before workout or something, and then I went not before workout. At that time I wasn't working out, but then I went during the day, and then I went at night, you know. And it does help because of the fellowship, right? That's what they call it, is, the fellowship, the community, so much. It was called like Serenity. I don't know if it's still there, but then I went there, and yeah, that's the whole reason, is that 10 minutes, man, 10 to 15 minutes, you don't want to be there. You're like, what the fuck, dude? Are you kidding me? Like, again, you're like comparing yourself. You're like,
I'm better.
yeah, you're like, what, dude? I don't belong here. Because you got people talking about, it's not just alcoholism. You got people talking about like, yeah, they're alcoholism and on top of like heroin addictions and stuff like that. Like, yeah, they're just, yeah. And I've seen like fights break out in there, like there's this guy that came in there hopped up. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, what it really does is, I don't discourage AA. I have a lot of respect for it. Anything that helps you get through substance abuse, do it. Any chance you could get, do it. It's so primitive. Not primitive. It's so important. It's so important for you to find an avenue, whatever it is, whatever works for you. But 4 months in, I don't know what happened, but I think I'm pretty sure I started drinking again, because I didn't stop drinking till just 2.5 years ago. Mind you, I'm 39 now. This was just 36 and a half?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
I'm probably terrible at math. Is it 37 and a half? I don't know.
I thought you were Asian, bro.
Yeah, I know, right? But it was like 2.5 years that I just quit alcohol, like for good, right? And that's why I always say I'm a late bloomer, Dude, bro, even in my mid-30s I was drinking. 35 I was drinking, dude. Yeah. But within that time, in my early 30s, I started realizing, this is going to sound weird, but I started just realizing that it's probably bad for me, right? I've always known that, but I started taking action, meaning I'd quit, I'd relapse, I quit, I'd relapse. But I had a breaking point. Finally in San Diego, when I moved out there in San Diego, I was still drinking and stuff like that. And I was fucking riding my motorcycle drunk as fuck.
Oh, that's not good. Dude.
Crazy, huh? It was a Harley FXDB. Street mob.
Yeah, riding motorcycles drunk is one of the worst things ever.
And and I'm sure the audience and myself. Trust me, I know what everyone's thinking. It's kind of like, you're an idiot, dude. You should probably die. And I agree with you. Honestly, I'm not just saying that. There's times where, again, till this day, I'm like, I can't believe I'm still alive. This is crazy, But I rode my motorcycle drunk, and yeah, it was just gnarly. I got into an accident with it. Luckily, it wasn't like a crazy accident. I flipped over, but it was like on a fucking what's it called? One of those land islands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was one of those islands. Fortunately, not very fast. It was just a dumb turn that I made that I undershot. Ugh. Yeah, and then I was there, and luckily no cop was there, so I just got up and rode away. Yeah, my bike was fucked up a little bit, like
scratches.
But, yeah, and all that shit. But nothing happened. But that was crazy. Again, I can't recall everything because half of it I was blacked out. But I'm just letting you know, like, all the things that I can possibly remember. Right? The DUIs were a big highlight. Obviously, the riding drunk was a big highlight. You just feel so unstoppable till you're not.
Yeah.
And anyway, I don't know what it is. I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And trust me, I've had plenty of those times. But this was like the breaking point. For some reason, I was like, I can't keep doing this, man. So in my almost early 30s, 33, something like that, I still remember this time I had a like epiphany. I was like, dude, I can't keep doing this shit. So that's when I started reading self-development books. My very first one was Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Right. That was my first one, but I was still drinking like a motherfucker. So technically, it was like, yeah, it was my first one, but it wasn't the one. But when I really started, when I stopped for 5 months of drinking, this is when real change happens, because it was almost like I was learning to stop being an addict almost, Something came about me. I don't know what that is. That's why I say I'm very lucky. I don't know. I can't pinpoint it. But I stopped drinking for months at a time. And I remember reading
Meditations?
It was Mark Manson's How to Stop Giving a Fuck or something like that. Or Don't Give a Fuck About What Anything Wants, or something like that. Mark Manson's book, just don't give a fuck about people. I don't know, or something like that. But
it's like an orange, black.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Exactly. Fuck. Do you remember what it was? How to Stop Giving a Fuck About People?
I think I have it on my Kindle, like the Kindle.
Me too. I have it on my Audibles, and but it's very dear to me because I remember, right? I remember till this day what it was. But anyway, after that, I just went in the zone. I wanted to be better at everything, right? Because when you start quitting, you just don't sit there because improvement is a constant.
Yes.
You keep wanting to improve. So now for me, it was the other way around. I was doing martial arts still when I was drunk, right? Like I was still doing, like surprisingly, I was getting up every morning and doing martial arts after a fucking long ass binger.
Right.
You know? And of course, you know, like when I was doing jiu-jitsu and stuff back in San Diego, they'd smell it on me. They were like, "Whoa," they joke around with me. They'd be like,
Right.
"Oh,
Playful.
another crazy night, man. Another long night for you." And I think it was just they knew me as that like party guy, but they didn't know to the certain extent of how bad it was. But anyway, yeah, and I wanted to learn about everything, man. I just started reading all these self-help books and dating books because obviously that's, you know, like dating books, self-help books, fucking everything that I could get my hands on, man. You know, business even though I wasn't doing a business, but it was just a good kind of good feel
Feeling,
good. Yeah. It went along the lines of self-improvement. But I think that's what it is. I'd fall off the wagon, I'd come back on, I'd fall off the wagon, come back on. But what I heard from a therapist that I keep mentioning on this podcast is that, you know, when you relapse, try not to get down on yourself because you're actually learning how to quit, right? It's like what we do in life. We fail and you're learning.
Yes.
That's a crazy way to put it. That's a good way to put it. Because when you quit and you relapse, a lot of people get down on themselves.
Right.
They're like, fuck, man, well, I'm just going to be an addict forever. But that's not the way to think. You're actually getting triggers, learning those triggers and those cues to quit, you know, whatever you're going through. So that's a crazy way to put it. But anyway, yeah, man. And then I moved to Vegas. And whatever I'm telling you is like a short story version, right? I know I've been ranting on for quite a while, but so finally when I moved to Vegas, my mom had Alzheimer's and it was getting bad. So it was, you know, my dad was like, "Hey man, like we need you now."
Right.
And yeah, man.
That's how you move here, right now.
Yep. And I was like, I was always like an alcohol. I didn't do things the right way, you know, but I always loved my parents, like, because they brought me up and all that stuff. And I knew family. I know what family was, you know, even though like my way of being was kind of fucked up. I still had like principles and values, I guess. So when I moved back here, it was time. I took care of my mom and my dad, like he's old. But check this out, man. Like the quality of how I was taking care of him was shit. I was still drinking every night. You know, I started drinking again, you know, after the relapse and stuff like that. And, yep, it was, yeah. So what I would have figured, I started to see that and I was like, I can't live my life this way, man. Like my parents, I was physically there, but I wasn't there. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, I felt like I was doing something, but I wasn't. I was still like getting up late and shit when they needed stuff. Like I wasn't there, man. I kind of would be, you know, to pick up medicine and all that shit, but I wasn't. So I think that was the last straw, dude. I was like, man, I can't do this shit. And then that was it. But I think that was just an accumulation of me fucking up for years and years and years.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, man, that's the sum of it. Yeah. Sorry, like, you know, get your word in, but yeah, I think if looking back at it, the reason why I quit is that it doesn't serve me anymore. But yeah, man, like, and then after that, that was the breaking point of, it wasn't just, you know, with me taking care of my parents, it was just an accumulation and it took all these years. Now looking back at it, back in hindsight, it's just an accumulation of what I went through. And honestly, luckily, again, I always say this, but I'm surprised, not even try to be melodramatic, but I'm surprised that I'm not dead or I'm in jail. Like literally what you just heard, right? There's some things that happen along the way too, that I don't want to make like false stories, you know, because quite frankly, I can't remember it, but I know, like I probably gotten in a few accidents in the freeway and all that stuff. So yeah, that was pretty much it. And listen, man, like I don't know, it's just a bunch of things. I can try to justify why I quit alcohol, but it's just for all the reasons.
So you weren't the designated driver, but you were the designated drinker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah,
designated designated drinker driver is not a good combination.
No, absolutely not. And
That's why I said don't drink and drive, smoke and fly. No.
that's
Bad
but,
advice.
but yeah, that's it, man. So after that, yeah, with everything, and like half the time, or not half the time, but then I was still working out. Like I was a punctual.
Drunk lifting is a thing, though.
Yeah, dude, I was a functioning alcoholic.
Yeah.
Not that I'd lift when I was drunk, but again, I drank at night, and I'd wake up in the morning, I'd be hungover as shit, but I still needed to go lift or do martial arts or something. It was like I was still capable. I was still, maybe I was younger. That's why I was able to do it. But yeah, saying that, I think like martial arts saved my life. So I'll kind of conclude with this. Again, I want to reiterate that I only tell that story because that's why we started this podcast, and it stems from that.
Right.
That's the root cause of why this podcast is here. Why I like to talk to people, because you can learn a thing or two from people, whether it's them, that going through the same things or what they like to do. Because being an alcoholic and then trying to improve your life, they go hand in hand, right? Because it's not just like you stop drinking and all of a sudden you're just like going about your business. It's like to keep you kind of self-regulated and not getting into like terrible shit. Dustin Poirier says this: if you don't have anything to work on, you start thinking terrible thoughts. If I wasn't doing martial arts, bro, I'd be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I'd be an alcoholic.
Right.
Or if I wasn't working out,
Overweight, probably.
Yeah, or whatever.
Right.
I'd probably have something wrong with me as far as like maybe a cancer or something.
But that being said, you can't be remorseful or regretful for your past.
Yeah.
Because all those experiences molded you into the man you are today, right? That's how I see it. Like, I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, 100%, and I try to own them, at least all of them. Maybe not all of them, but at least I try to own that experience so I can learn and become better because of the shit that I've been through. I think that's the same with you.
Yeah, everything is in hindsight, right? And whatever we did, again, luckily I'm still here. I always tell you that I don't know. Some people never get out of it. I'm one of the lucky ones, man. And I don't know. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just pure luck. Maybe, it's easy for me to say like, yeah, I picked myself up by my bootstrap and, I had the sense of awareness to quit drinking, and try to improve my life. That's not the case, man. I got lucky. I still can't explain it, Right. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's faith, if it's just the way I was brought up. It could be anything. The universe, I don't know, what you want to call it. But yeah, I got really lucky. But again, I want to kind of go back to this point. Again, you're not alone. When I made this podcast, this kind of quote unquote self-improvement podcast, and to talk about people's stories and stuff like that, like it was for a purpose. Right. It's purpose driven. Everything that we're doing here, I know sometimes we joke around and stuff like that, but everything is purpose driven here. We're trying to add value, hopefully in some sort of way, and we're trying to get better at adding value because that is the purpose. There's no fucking clickbait. I know you got to follow like YouTube's model, but then there's no like clickbait here. Like, I don't want it to be that way. Yeah. It's just, that's how modern society is. If you see the clickbaity thumbnails, but in order for people to click it to get the value, it's almost what you got to do because that's how we operate nowadays in social media. So yeah, I just want to tell you, man, like if you are an addict of some sorts, or whatever it is, if you have some mental challenges that you have to go through, man, you're not alone. And like you were saying, it was perfectly said. We have to be interdependent of each other, meaning we have to rely on each other. We need help. Don't be afraid to ask for it. I know how hard that could be because, like I said, sometimes you just don't want to burden people also. Right. But sometimes you think you could take care of it yourself. But man, it's the road will, I guess, be somewhat easier if you do, go get help. Go get help, man. And I want to say this too, that if you do have problems, like DM me, man, DM me and I could be kind of like your sponsor. I'm not an AA or anything, so it's not official. But if anyone needs anyone to talk to about like their addictions or whatever their problems, man, like just, dude, I'm here. You know, my DMs are available. If you're going through something, man, just don't be hesitant. And yeah, man. I know I went on. That's the last word. I know I kind of went on a tangent, but that's what this podcast was meant for. But yeah, we should probably end this because it's been like an hour.
And,
we will talk more about it.
Right.
You know, as I start to remember things or something, or maybe subjects arise about it. But yeah, that's the story, man. Yeah.
But I want to end this with this note. Like, this conversation was all on hindsight. Like, when we were doing the drinking, driving, doing high, getting to places that we're not supposed to go, shit-faced, blacked out, head first into the ground. Like, but on hindsight, that's what we think. But on that time, in the present moment, when I jumped into the car, drunk, I thought I was doing the right thing. Yep. I'm like, yeah, I'm of course I'm able to drive. Like, what are you talking about? Yep. So we didn't know that we were making those mistakes at the time. So and we're alive. We got all our limbs. Like, we never through a terrible car crash or whatever, which is, I believe we're lucky on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like, you don't know at the time. You think no one wants to make mistakes, right? Not a single person. I like, they don't want to make mistake on purpose. Every mistake that's been an accident. I mean, at least 95%. So, but at least like we now know we're more experienced than on that terms. Like, just call an Uber, right? Like, it's just what, like $14-15, and you might save your life just that one click of a button. And you know, you gotta think smart.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, good last word. And yeah, man. Yeah, I really enjoyed this podcast, man. As always, yeah, that's always been the goal, man. Even if it's not, you know, that deep, you know, like I know we got a little deep there, but you know, when I talk to people, that's the whole goal. That's the whole goal. I don't care to get anything out of this podcast, but you know, share your story and add value. Right. Maybe it might help some kid that's going through the same thing. Exactly. That's what we're here for. But another one in the books, man.
Sweet 16.
Sweet 16. Perfect.